can have it together. Yeah.
Right. Okay, team. When you're ready, Grant, you'll be right.
Grant.
Yes.
So, welcome to this extraordinary council meeting, which has the mandate today to consider the museum deliberations that we've had ongoing for some time now, including it. And so, Rhiannon, when you're ready, and while she's galloping up to the table, today we just have 4 options in front of us which we will need to make a decision on. And for those that have looked at the paper, you'll notice that there's 2 types of stats that we're dealing with today. One is that option 1, which is go ahead with the original plans, is the highest ranking as far as the percentages are concerned. But then you could also argue that options 2, 3 and 4 combined are separately but collectively indicating some degree of clawback of the costs. So just to keep that in mind as you go through, because the figures are relatively close between 3 of them. So,
in the heading.
So we have one apology, which is...
Isn't there, right?
Oh, sorry, and Evelyn, as apology as well, thank you. If somebody would like to move that we accept those apologies. Barry and Trish, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried.
Okay.
And so the floor is yours.
Kia ora, councillors. So I will maybe just touch on some points just to elucidate the key points in the report. Hopefully it is fairly explanatory in terms of you have had all the submissions and heard from those who submitted. So this report is really providing some analysis to support you in your decision making today. So I'll just note one error in the body of the report, which is on page 5 of 13 of my report. So just where it's got the detail of the options, there's a typo on the rates increase required for option 4. So just to note that that is 1.04 rather than 1.54. So just to note that minor error within the report. So speaking to the main points in terms of the consultation, you're correct, Matt. Obviously, in this consultation for the first time, you chose to ask the community not only what their first preference was, but what ranked order would they put these options in. And that has the benefit, particularly where you have a quite divided community with one group feeling very strongly on one side and one group on the other. It enables them to say, of all of these options, which is their most preferred and which is their least preferred, and it gives you a more nuanced view. With nuance, of course, that then makes things less clear-cut for yourselves. So I think that's just important for you to consider in your decision-making, which you would put more weight on, what the community's first preference was vis-a-vis the rank preference. So in terms of analysing these results and providing that analysis to you, you can see that while there is 2 strong groups on each end of the issue, there's a compromise view within the middle in terms of what an option might be in that more cost-saving option, and that's your option 3. I will just note a caveat that was clear through the submission process and the hearing process. While there are real benefits to that ranked approach, the negative is that it does create a bit of confusion for the community. And so I just think you just need to bear that in mind as well, particularly around the differences between option 2 and option 3. I think when you put these options together around the table, what you were wanting to convey to the community was the kind of decision making in front of you as the councillors. What are the options for cost savings and how you might stack them up. But I think there has been some confusion amongst the community around that. So in my report, I've attempted to provide some analysis around where the community would like to see some of those savings if you were to choose to make savings. So I've broadly in that analysis talked about option 2 and option 3 in relation to the physical build and the landscaping type environment versus option 4 relating to the experience. And so you'll see within the strategic alignment section of the report that I speak to those earlier principles that the Museum Governance Group really set for the framework of the project around what would a successful project look like, and then that speaks to which of those options to help you inform your decision making do you feel as councillors are going to best achieve those outcomes. So I think probably what this feedback from the community really shows is that this is quite a complex issue. It's a complex issue for you as councillors. This is a major capital project. There are difficult decisions all the way through to be made in terms of where the funding goes to and how to best achieve these outcomes. There is not one clear view within the community as to what that outcome might be. When you add up all of option 2, option 3, option 4, there is a group within the community that want to see that cost saving option be put forward on the table, but there isn't necessarily consensus about how those cost savings might be best achieved. So that's one of the challenges, I think, for your decision making today. In the relation of those cost saving options, a further kind of complexity to consider around option 4 is just by nature of the timing of the project and the timing of the development of what the experience would look like. It was pretty difficult through the engagement, I think, to give a really clear picture to the community about what that immersive digital experience might look like. So when you see the feedback from the community, which many of you would have heard in person at the engagement within Invercargill Central, what you can see is that people want to have an interactive experience. What they're less clear on is whether that is achieved best through physical things or through digital. And part of that, I think, is linked to simply the stage of development that the project is at, but I think also contains many sort of valid things raised by the community, that which I know will also being considered by yourselves and by the project delivery team around how do you achieve a successful digital experience, how do you keep it fresh, all of those kind of things. So I guess I hope that that analysis assists you. That's how I've written the report. I think this isn't necessarily a clear-cut issue. I do think that one of the benefits in terms of those ranking of those options is that in a number of our recent consultations, councillors that you have seen brought back to the table, there has been quite a polarised view on some issues within the community. This gives you some direction around what a compromise option might look like should you choose to take that. But I think that the complexity of the issue and the limitations that come through an engagement really show just how every consultation, every engagement that we take with the community is really to provide information to assist you in your decision making. And that's one of the things that sometimes can be quite hard to communicate with the community, that this isn't like a referendum, this is information to support your decision making. So I'll leave it there in terms of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so I'll do the first one for that for you. Just in future, when we're looking to the ranking system, as opposed to a little bit like the first past the post type thing, where you've got 4 options and whichever ranks, whichever gets the most percentage ends up being the desired one. Is it possible in the future to have 2 parts to it? So the first part says, are you prepared to run with the status quo, which is the design and the cost, or do you want some cost savings? And if the answer is predominantly yes, we do want some cost savings, then we give them a range of options of which are the preferred. That might differentiate that.
I think that there's always options to improve and look at the way we ask questions.
Yep. And just want to reinforce that I got some of the feedback personally around the digital experience, the 70-30 stuff. A lot of people, especially older people, were quite confused about what digital actually meant. They thought we're just going to have a whole lot of flat screens around the walls, and that's obviously not the case. And I guess the other thing that confused some of the feedback we got from the community is at the time that we put this out, there was I guess some degree of lobbying in the community that we should stop the project and not build where we're currently building and look to farmers or look to H&J Smiths or wherever. And so I think that confused quite a few people as well. Well, I mean, that's beyond our control, but it was just one of the impacts, I think.
Speaking to that, Mayor, I think that is, again, one of the issues that you often have around very complex projects like this, and that's one of the reasons that that kind of timeline around decision making has been included here within the report to give you that context. With the nature of any big capital build project, there are certain gates that you have to move through for efficiency, and I guess this is one of those circumstances where being close and involved in all of those very technical decisions is not something that the community obviously would be able to do, and that is one of, I think, the factors around that.
Okay, questions then for Peter, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under option C, it says reducing car parking. Reducing it, what's the original number of car parks, and what would it be reduced to under C?
Well, my understanding of option of C, which is option 3, is that that is a delay to the car park. It's not removing the car park altogether, it's delaying it. And I'm sorry, I don't have the specifics around the number of the car parks in front of me right now, but I can certainly take that question away.
I feel that we should have that figure here today. It's most important. You're building a multi-million-dollar museum, and we just need to know how many car parks. Is it going to be 20 or 40 or 50? Originally, the old museum, we had about 150 odd car parks. I just need to know, because
What museum was that?
Yeah, so I'll let
the
you
one
come.
along there, you go and count where they were, Darren, you'll get about the same number as I do.
As opposed to the museum or Victoria Avenue?
A long museum from Victoria Avenue
That's Victoria Avenue.
along to Calvin Street. The numbers were there. I counted a long time ago.
A lot of that's on-street parking, councillor.
So before I let you get in there, Grant.
71, yeah, 71. That's what we'd be delaying. 71 is
Yep.
what we're delaying.
Anyone?
Yeah, it's in
What Peter's saying is how many were originally there.
Yep.
How many we got in the Grant, how many car parks are we going to have?
It's in the.
It's in the report, 71.
Yeah, so I think to Councillor Ludlow's point, you know, there are car parks that were used to service the museum which are in Victoria Ave, but they're not technically within the precinct of the museum. So the precinct within the museum was 71, but you know, there was a discussion and talk about expanding that footprint to make sure we had sufficient car parks for the museum. So, but as Rhiannon said, this is about the delay of that car park spend. So the option that's put forward in the paper is the delay in the car park. So it's not saying won't have car park, expanded car parking thing of 71, it would just be delayed.
So of the original 71, some of them will be delayed.
All of it.
Yeah, if you go with that option.
If we go with that option, so it comes down from 71 to how many parks?
Well, my understanding it's about 25.
To 25 parks.
And immediately in front of the museum, which basically gives you your disability parking and some service parking, and then a small number of public parks, and then the residual will be spread through Victoria Ave.
And I just
then
one
equally
speaker
along
at a time, please. Yeah.
and then along back towards the cricket pavilion. So
Yeah, thanks for that, Grant. Well, I definitely would not be supporting
Yep.
delaying any car parking at all.
Yep. So I'll just let Michael contribute, or Aaron, but my understanding from Lee is that the numbers that were originally there are still there. The additional trees that have been taken out are to facilitate a much wider car park.
yeah,
So
and that-
while we delay that, we don't lose anything we had before, really. It's
and
the
that's what
extra.
Darren's point is. If you actually think back to the original museum, there wasn't a lot of car parking space available. There was a bus pull-up area in front of the museum, and then there was a few car parks, and I think it was about 20, 25. It was very few.
Plus ungravel staff car parking down by the observatory.
Yes, yeah.
But if you take from the west side of the old museum down to Calvin Street,
Well, you may as well go right down Gala Street as well.
Those parks will still be there.
They'll still be there.
They'll still be there.
not too good on Monday to Friday because the workers in town park there. I don't know if there's much thought been put into this for car parking, to be fair.
Can if you put a parking time restriction.
Hang on, let's work through the chair, people, otherwise we'll go backwards and forwards. Michael?
Thank you, through yourself, Chair. I'd just firstly like to highlight and acknowledge that we do have one of the key staff members away today, unforeseen circumstances in relation to health reasons. But I do have my GM at the end of the table who will be able to elaborate a little bit in relation to the question that's been asked, but would highlight the information is in the report, but I'll pass on to my GM to give you the...
Aaron?
Thank you. I think the key piece that we want to make clear is that this isn't around removing the previous car parking for the museum. It is, as the Mayor noted, it is around an additional car park for the museum. Now, Councillor Dermody's right in that we have lost a very small number of car parks from immediately outside the original museum parking to create the loading zone, but that's only a small number. What we're actually talking about when we talk about car park in or out is a new additional car park for the area.
Darren?
Can I just seek clarification in option 3 about the removal of Green Star accreditation? So the accreditation process itself is a cost, but that doesn't preclude including some of the design principles. Is that correct?
That's correct. So there would be some things that Green Star would have required that we will likely not progress, and one of the examples of that was you would need to have things like electric vehicle charging in the car parking and things like that, and that may be stuff that we don't look to progress with, and we would have if we had decided to go down that Green Star. But when it comes to the actual design and construction of the building from a sustainability principles, whole of life, maintenance, etc., operational costs, we're not changing that dependent on the decision of whether or not to get the formal Green Star accreditation or not.
Thank you.
So I was able to clarify that this morning with Lee because I had a similar question. And so the response he gave was that most of the design features that would satisfy the Green Star will still be there, but the accreditation comes at a cost. If we take the accreditation away, there will be some savings in the building costs, and that's not, he wasn't alerting me to savings, he was just saying there are some things that the Green Star require you to do when you're building, that if you don't seek their accreditation, you don't have to do it. But you still end up with a pretty eco-friendly building. So, and the cost was about 900 grand.
And there's a significant audit process to go through whilst you're in the construction phase to bring people in, which adds time and complexity and cost.
So an example that he gave me was that as you're doing the build, the Green Star accreditation will require you to show how you've disposed of offcuts and other parts of the building that you might just throw away. Well, there's other things you have to do if you want the accreditation. So it's a lot about recycling material and stuff like that.
Lee's online.
Yeah, Tom.
Lee's online.
Oh, sorry.
I see Lee's online there, actually. As I understood it, and maybe you can just clarify it, if you don't do Green Star at the beginning, you can never do it later. Whereas a car park you can, but Green Star you either do it from the start because of the requirement to, show how you're building and disposing of materials and so forth. Would that be right, Lee? It's either do it now or don't do it at all.
Can you hear us, Lee?
You obviously can't.
He's looking vacant.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to...
Don't think so.
Lee?
I think he's just struggling to get off the
No, cannot. Can anybody else answer that?
Yeah, you're right there. So, and it's to do with what Mayor Clark's talked about around the fact that it starts from the project start.
Yeah.
So everything you do through the project needs to align with a Green Star accreditation program, and you can't re-engineer that back, obviously, at the end of the project, and because you haven't worked through those steps of Green Star. So,
I mean, that seems to me to be a material difference between the options. If you don't do Green Star at the start, you can never do it later. You can delay the car park. You could even change the, vary the amount of data, and you can make that. But you can Green Star, you either do it, or you don't, which is, affects the way I think about it.
Yeah. The advice I was given again was Green Star, you start at the beginning. If you don't start then, there's no
Yeah,
catch-up.
that's right. Yes. The other point on Green Star is that there is a, for want of a better term, a maintenance cost to it.
Yep.
So you have to have accreditation. Yeah, and I forget the accreditation period, but it's, you know, it's frequent. So I think
Yep.
it's might be every second year. And then you've got to maintain standards around all the other things you're doing to. So there is a cost to retaining the Green Star certification, and of course,
as well.
if you have the cost at the start of, you know, now, you go with it and then you decide to pull out of Green Star at a later date because you don't want the maintenance costs, you've got sunk costs on Green Star. So you've either got to be in or you've got to be out.
So, and the last thing I'll say before I get Lee to contribute is that the advice he gave me this morning is exactly that. But he also said that going forward, if we are really passionate about climate change and stuff like that, it undermines that if we don't go down the Green Star. Now, he wasn't making a pitch for Green Star to me, but he said that he's been advised that most government buildings that are being built now have to have that accreditation. The government's made quite a strong commitment to that because it does contribute a lot of benefits as you go forward, things like reduction in power costs and stuff like that, heating costs. So Lee, are you with us?
Certainly am.
So did you hear the discussion?
Unfortunately, I didn't actually. Just picked up the last little bit, couple of minutes.
So while we've got you live, there was just some discussion around the benefits of Green Star, whether it can be applied for halfway through or at the end of a project. We probably already know the answer to that. And some questions around the potential part of the car park that we're putting aside. The advice we've given so far, but you need to reaffirm that, is that we've still got the car parks we've always had, well, a majority of them anyway. Where the trees have been removed is an actual additional car park which we could or could not delay if we wanted to.
Okay, on the question of Green Star, it is a commit now at the start because there's a number of points we get very early in the project, and as we progress design and as we deliver the project, we score points towards attaining the accreditation. We're looking to achieve the accreditation. It's not a given, so we have to provide a lot of evidence and the likes of that. Yes, MB, through the central government and MB, have stipulated that any new government building would achieve Green Star 5-star as a minimum. And again, that's leaning into that sustainability piece. Green Star buildings are above and beyond the building code, the building standard. They are inherently more sustainable. They should be lower cost to run, and they should have smart innovation within them, i.e. water recovery and the things like that. So I think that's the Green Star one done. Happy to take questions on that. But regards to car parking, we have lost a number of car parks from what was in the original museum, and this is just due to reconfiguration. Also achieving Green Star, if we do that around disability parks, coach parks, we've had to reconfigure the front entrance a little bit to make it work a bit better and make it a bit safer. So a number of parks have been lost from the original museum, and the new car park will provide about 65 parks. It's not all new parks, because I think we've lost about a dozen to 15 parks from the original museum.
Thank you. Barry.
Yeah. Can anyone explain to me who does this accreditation for the Green Star? Is it a government department do it, or?
It's what they call the New Zealand Green Building Council, but Green Star is accredited on a global platform. But in New Zealand, they call it the New Zealand Green Star or New Green Building Standards. Independent, Murray. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Trish.
Have we given any thought to the delay in the car parks, when they would happen, when they would be replaced, or we would start on them?
Well, no, I didn't hear that. If you
Sorry.
could just...
Option 3 talks about a delay in
Yep.
some car parks.
Yep.
Have we given any thought as to when they might be, if we choose option 3, when the car parks would be actioned? You know,
Well,
at what time?
I'll speak for some of the staff, I guess, to say that once the funding's available, then the car parks will be available. I mean, the idea of clawing back the costs is to reduce the extra money that we have to find for the museum project. If you take the car park out, you have to do it at some later stage, but the question is not when do you do it, it's when do you find the additional money that you need to do it, I guess.
Okay.
And that's
Thanks,
for Michael or Patricia or somebody to give some clearance to, but that wouldn't be a short-term thing, I wouldn't think.
I think we have modelled it with a 2 to 3 year delay,
Thanks.
so that we could bring it back in once we're 2 to 3 years after opening.
Steve, you had a question?
Oh yeah, thanks, Mayor. Probably just echoing the Deputy Mayor's comment around option 3, which I was originally in favour of, but just acknowledging the clear differences in that option. Just confirming, I've just got a couple of questions. Just confirming that delay in the car park is a saving of it's like $1.5 million. Is that for now? Is it if we separated those savings out?
If you look at the percentage, it's only a fraction.
Yeah,
It's,
I'm just
it's
asking
only
for
about
costs.
$1 a week on people's rates.
Yeah, hang on,
Question's been
we
asked.
won't have the debate yet. Rhiannon, in your report it does
Yeah.
quantify the savings.
There's the difference between option 3 and option 2. So option 3 is 74.3 million. Option 2 is 75.8. So you're making a saving. Somebody help me with my maths on the moment. Making a saving of 700, 800,000.
okay.
I'm looking at the
No,
chief.
yes, Councillor, you are correct. It is 1.5.
About 1.5, right?
Yep.
Okay. Can I just have one more question?
Sure,
That's
yeah.
good. Just this is probably for Lee. I definitely, with the Green Star accreditation, understand, the process, sustainability, and maintenance costs. But there's also, and there might be a strategy in place for this, but there's also real benefits in terms of the marketing and promotional opportunities that sit if we get the accreditation. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There is no other Green Star museum in New Zealand, for starters. So we will be the first, puts Invercargill on the map. I suppose a lot of facilities that will come after Te Unua, if we were to achieve Green Star, would look at us as a leading sort of facility in that sort of sense. So yes, there is other Green Star buildings in New Zealand, but this would be a first Green Star museum.
That, Steve. It was interesting when we did ICL that there are a whole lot of awards nationally for what you consider to be small parts of a build. People were quite focused on Green Star, different types of construction, so it's not just a matter of the big project in some ways. Sometimes you get quite a bit of accreditation for doing just small innovative stuff as well. Going on with Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to you, Lee, and it's also about the Green Star accreditation. I understand the mechanics and how it all works and how it's accredited. I'm interested to pick up on Councillor Dermody's response saying that it would be a continued cost annually to keep the accreditation. Do we know what that cost actually is? Because I don't think I've seen it anywhere.
Because they're not people.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't believe there's an ongoing licensing fee. I'm not 110%, but I have built a few Green Star buildings, but I don't believe there's an ongoing cost for the accreditation. I think once you're certified, you are certified, and you receive that accreditation. But I would, to be 110%, I would need to look into that and come back to you.
Thank you. If you could do that, that would be helpful.
Just to clarify though, Lee, with ongoing maintenance, you have to maintain to that Green Star standard, right? So you would expect that there would be a cost associated with maintaining that Green Star standard of the building for accreditation.
Again, I'd need to probably triple check to come back to you, Grant, but because the Green Star accreditation, or because the Green Star standards change, or they get updated and improved, usually biannually, So a building that was Green Star 5-star 4 or 5 years ago may not be a Green Star 5-star now. So, and I don't believe the council, or the Green Star Building Council, require anybody to bring their building back up to the new standard. So again, I think it's once you've received the accreditation, you've received the accreditation at that time, and I don't believe there would be a driver to keep on meeting the new standards. So I believe it's set and forget. Once you've achieved it, you've achieved it. A bit like a driving license.
Yep. So, Lee, when you're asking that question, it might be helpful also to give us some overview of, while there might be an ongoing cost to re-accreditation, there'll also be ongoing savings as well.
Yeah, true.
Like you mentioned, power savings, smart water recycling and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think if as the standards moved on, and if you were to keep to the new standards, yes, I'm going. Technology is always moving on. So and Green Star is pushing developers, pushing building owners towards the next innovation. So yes, if you were going to in 5 years' time want to hit the 4-star or 5-star, you would be putting the latest technology into that and deploying the latest innovation, and therefore that should be bringing you savings, because that's the whole idea of it.
Another question?
Thank you. It's supplementary to my original and subsequently the answers. So my understanding is when we, as council, going for the Green Star accreditation, it's a lifetime accreditation to that building, which would involve environmental changes determined by what the organisation sees as being Green Star accredited. So when we're talking about a lifetime accreditation, there will be some changes dictated to us to keep that accreditation. So have we looked at, are we willing for this to be a lifetime accreditation to this museum, or are we only apportionating that to the short-term lifespan of the museum in terms of its lifetime?
Well, I guess, and I'll let Lee have some input as well, but you'd assume that if we were working on the museum being a 50-year lifespan or beyond, if you got to year 25 and the conditions of keeping your accreditation got too expensive for ratepayers, it wouldn't be the end of the world if that accreditation lapsed, I guess, because it's no different for us now taking it out right at the beginning.
I guess it's to have that future thinking mindset that what we're deciding to do now is going to be beneficial to our ratepayers in the future. Sure. And our next generation.
Yep, thank you. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions. I just want to go back to pages 5 and 10, where it mentions the rates increase for each of the options. And I'm not absolutely clear on the alteration that was given at the start, because it would appear to be option 3 that needed the alteration to it. Yes. Option 1 and option 3 are listed in the written material as each being a 1.54 rates increase. That can't be right.
No, it's not.
The alteration we were given was to option 4, going to 1.04. But can I have some clarity about option 3? Because option 3 cannot be the same rates increase as option 1.
So just to confirm, the correction was for option 3.
Right, unfortunately you...
Did I misspeak?
It was heard as option 4.
Yeah, Rhiannon did mention that there was an error on option 3 before, around the percentage.
So the alteration...
The alteration was to 1.04.
For option 3.
For option 3.
Right, okay, so that's not what was heard. Thank you for the clarification.
Option 3, 1.04.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. And my other question, slightly differently. It seems from conversation around the table that there is some thought from councillors as we're discussing that we could keep the Green Star accreditation and possibly still delay the car park. I just want to clarify, or have it clarified, that in fact there is no option to do that.
Yeah.
Of the options we have on the table, there is no option that allows us to keep the Green Star accreditation. and delay the car park.
I'll ask
And
Mike.
we can't, and from my understanding, we cannot introduce a new option.
Well, I'll ask Michael Morris that question in a minute, but it would be my assumption that we don't have to accept any of those options if we don't want it. We can modify to another option. We've done this before in council, so I'll let Michael contribute to that.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. You are correct. Council can choose to just any outcome that is not listed there. It is up for council. This is, as Rhiannon indicated, advice. However, it does cause council issues to consult on something and then choose to do something completely different that's not, that wasn't consulted on. However, that is within council's right to do so.
Yep, thank you. Tom?
So sorry, just for clarity there.
Yep.
Michael, what you're saying is we could reject all 4 of the current options and introduce a new option. It would give us a problem with what we had consulted on, but we could do it. Just want that to be clarified at this stage.
It is within council's power to do so, yes.
But we open ourselves to possible public complaint.
Public complaint
for not having consulted.
and judicial review.
Thank you. Just wanted to make that absolutely clear for everybody to understand.
Can I, I think
Tom, yes, thank you.
Can I just clarify the value that's ascribed to delaying the car park? Because I think the difference between the numbers is 1.5 million, which presumably is the cost of the car park. But actually, if you only defer it by 2 years, it's only the time value of money that you're saving. It's not 1.5 million. It's the time value of delaying that 1.5 million by 2 years, which is probably 100,000 or something, I think at the most. And it might well be the construction costs increase to the point where it's costing you more. I think the other point I would make with it is that it means that we have the museum as a building site effectively for another 2 years, which I think would be unfortunate. So can you just clarify that point about the real value, if you do it on an NPC basis, what's actually the value of removing the car park?
No, you're not removing it, deferring it.
It's a 2-year deferral on 1.7 million.
Yes, that's 60 grand.
Through you, Chair, we never actually calculated the MPV. It was all about making sure that we were deferring the pressure on our budgets and on our capital ceilings. By delaying it out, we start to smooth that capital pressure. So that was where that one's costed, and you are correct. There is a risk with that option, and that 1.5 today may be closer to 2 in 2 to 3 years' time, or it could be less.
But the point is, even if it's dead accurate, even if it's 1.5 and it still costs us 1.5, the only thing you save is the value of the money for that, which is about 60,000, as Grant has just said. So you should see it's a $60,000 saving rather than a $1.5 million saving. That's how I think about it anyway.
Yeah, good point. Any other questions? Oh, Grant, yes?
Yeah, well, it's not more a question, is more of a sort of a comment really. Obviously as lead on this project, I've been heavily invested in getting the right outcome for the community here. Attended the consultation, read through all the documents received back, and spoken to a heck of a lot of people. And what surprised me probably the most was the and it re-emphasised the importance of this project to our community and the desire of our community to get on and get it done. And that was overwhelming, and I think that gives us good confidence as a council that that's what our community wants. And so I think councillors, need to bear that in mind with this decision. In terms of the options, my perspective on the options is, the car park is a critical piece of the infrastructure with the building, because we are looking to attract people to this, and we're expecting people to come along to this, and not only visitors to the province but also Southlanders love to park pretty close to where they want to go to. So I probably see it as a potential irritation if we don't do the car park at as we build the building, then we cause, some angst around just the functionality of the building. So I think people need to think about that as well. In terms of Green Star, I think we're progressing and we're doing everything we can to be as efficient and sustainable as we are. I suppose, I think we need to think, carefully around that. It gives us some good accreditation. It equally possibly plays into our ability to raise funds to close the funding gap with corporate partners. So our sense is an initial engagement with some corporate partners is that, that's an attractive feature of being a partner in funding in this project. So that's something to bear in mind. It's not a given. We haven't signed anyone up because of, that, but it's just something that's appealing to some people that we're looking to talk to around the fact that they are funding a Green Star 5-star building. So that's something else for people to weigh into their decision, I think also. But as I say, that's not banked, that's just sort of high level feedback initially. So yeah, look, from my perspective, after the consultation and, probably had a few hours less sleep at night over the last couple of months, I've landed on, the preferred option is we just keep moving and we get this done and deliver a really outstanding asset for our community for a long period of time. So that's probably where I'm sitting on it.
Michael.
Thank you. Through yourself, Chair, there were two questions asked earlier on which I think we just need to get my team to clarify on, which is the rate number on option 3. So I just wonder if Patricia has got a new number, because it can't be 1.04 either.
The rates number for option 3 is 1.36%. That's what we put out for consultation.
Thank you. And the second one is there's no option there which says keep Green Star and remove car park, and I just want to clarify with the team, I think you can't get Green Star without the car park. Just want to check that with the team. I'm not sure if he's nodding, so I think I had that right, but maybe you can clarify.
To achieve some of the points, we do need EV charging and bits and pieces, which is for us is incorporated in the car park. Just to clarify a question earlier around ongoing fees, there is a nominal fee of 6,900 for a member annually, but I'm just reading into that. That is through the audit period, which is a couple of years. And that's just us demonstrating to the Green Building Council the building is performing as we set out, and we have hit those targets. So at the moment, there seems to be a $6,900 ongoing annual cost, but I believe once the audits are complete, that cost would stop.
Trish.
Thank you. By voting for option 2, by implication, we're voting to retain the car park, the full car park. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Maria?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Councillor Dermody. With being the project lead for Project 1225, is there anything in the time that you've held the role and in public consultation that you think that this council should have been aware of anything that would ultimately affect how the project turns out to the community?
How the project turns out to the community.
And it's
Can you
finished.
clarify that?
So what I mean by that is we're making governance decisions on Project 1225, and part of that is the options that we've got done today. So what I'm asking is there anything that you think we could have missed in giving those considerations to the ultimate outcome of the museum? Whether it's a Green Star accreditation, whether it's a car park, whether it's design,
With the options in front of us today.
And also the consultation that you've held in the public. Is there anything you think that we could have missed from a government's perspective?
Not that I'm aware of. It's a pretty broad question, which probably needs a bit of reflection. But no, I think the project team has done a heck of a lot of work to try and deliver the outcomes that were given to us in the guiding principles that SMAG set up 4 or 5 years ago. And even, and I think Trish Lindsay raised it in the consultation, the questions around the moving numbers, and simply that was around, we couldn't get an accurate, absolutely accurate picture on our cost to build until we had moved through the design phases, right? And as we got through to detailed design, from initial design and developed design, it became more apparent, and so that's where some of those numbers started to move. But I've done a lot of asking of questions around other projects, even in the city and wider, and I'm comfortable from a governance level that we have done everything we can to deliver a project budget and be on track for that project budget at this point. Everything we can. I think the project team, Lee and his team and the executive have, turned every stone to deliver this within the budget, within the time frame, and within the spec. So,
thank you.
I'm comfortable with that. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Thank you.
My question is really in regards to option 4. So the digital ratio at 70:30. Do we know what the ongoing costs will be with tech upgrades and possible changes into the future? Just having some idea if we do change that or reduce it in any way.
Lee, any ideas on that one?
It's probably going to be an Eloise question, actually, because she has been working quite a lot on the operational budget moving forward, and I haven't got an awful lot of oversight on that. So unfortunately,
she's just come up.
Eloise is here.
That's
access stage left.
Thank you, Lee. It's a great question. Look, we are still working up the operational budget, and that picture is starting to emerge as we go through, as we've moved now through the concept design for the experience and moving into the developed design, is to understand, particularly with the longer term exhibition, the story of Southland exhibition, what the actual lifetime of that will be, and what the phase out kind of different components will be, because there's a hardware element, there's a software element, there's also iterative changes that we would want to make to keep that exhibition and experience fresh for the community. So at this stage, because we haven't made those hardware and software selections yet, I'm developing an operational budget, but we're probably not quite there at this phase to be able to determine exactly what the numbers are going to look like for an operational perspective. What I would say is that yes, more digital components does come with a higher operational cost, but all of the experience components are interwoven and interrelated, and actually maintaining kind of safe environment, mounts, cases, just the wear and tear that we would expect would equally have an impact on all the kind of built components and things like that. So it's not a big difference, because it's the whole experience as a whole.
So I can contribute to that a little bit. When I asked the same question of a couple of the very large museums in Australia, they said that while technology comes at a maintenance cost, you have to offset it about having a museum that's full of static displays, which comes at a huge cost as well, because you can change technology, you can change a program overnight on a set of technology, but if you have to physically move an exhibition or something you've got on things, that is very labour intensive and very, very time consuming as well. So there are costs on both sides, hence the need to try and balance out some digital with some more static stuff. Alex.
Thank you. So my question is around the Green Star stuff. It's fantastic, and you've said, Lee, this actually may either go either way, Eloise or Lee, that some of the materials that we use to get the Green Star accreditation and such provide better efficiency and better sustainability outcomes, etc. How, when we get to the other end of that, do we actually operationally measure what those outcomes are? So how do we know that by using these materials that we're actually reducing the power? How do we know that with better insulation or water water reticulation systems, we're saving money. Like, what is the measurable point at the end of it that actually goes, yeah, there's a benefit in doing it other than the accreditation and the marketing piece?
Yep. So Lee.
Yeah, great question. Look, I think the first answer to that is it is audited. So this is the whole point, I suppose, around the Green Star. And this is the difference between a Green Star and a non-Green Star building. A non-Green Star building, you can set all the goals that you want. You're never really held to account. With Green Star, you are held to account. There's year-by-year audits to ensure. So the consultants will have to set certain goals and parameters, and that's set and provided to Green Star. And then we have to go through an audit and check through, I think it's 2 years. So the building gets monitored and gets reported back to Green Star. And effectively, we are demonstrating that the building is as efficient, has met the goals or exceeded them, or somewhere where it hasn't, and that may be a software change or a big piece of equipment change. So that's part of the accreditation, is that it does continually get audited.
Is that potentially a measure that for the performance of the building or a performance of the project as a whole that we could actually display and communicate to the community that, hey, look, this is where we've met these measures, this is how much power that we've saved, this is how much this accreditation that we've actually decided to go ahead with, or if we do decide to go ahead with, this is how much it has saved us in the long run over time?
I think that would be I think it would be reasonable to do that, and it would be, I would guess, reasonably straightforward. I think another plus point, I suppose, from Green Star is that we can then, once we've had our audits and hopefully achieved all the goals that we've set out to, is then we can ask Green Star, the council, to give us insights to other buildings as well. So we can look at other Green Star buildings, don't have to be in New Zealand, and actually measure ourselves against those buildings too. So we can tap into that resource once our audits have been complete.
Excellent. And my follow-up question to that is around the car park, obviously, because it's in our options. And it was said before that the car park, if we don't go ahead with what's proposed, that would come into the part of that would chip into the ability to gain the Green Star accreditation. Does it not take into account the fact that there is considerable amount of parking access already around the facility itself? Like, you've got the cricket pavilion, the bowling club, the croquet club, all of the parking around Fowdwick gates. Like within a 200-metre radius of the facility, you've still got hundreds of car parking, free accessible car parking. And if we put accessibility car parking in the front of the museum, we've also got the Hargest bus run for passenger transport that just goes along Gala Street. Like, in terms of accessibility for the facility, for walking distance to town, like to me, like, it seems like those sustainability efforts are better measured by providing more active transport modes and almost less opportunity for cars than to just build another concrete slab on the ground. So I guess I'm wondering why why Green Star accreditation comes with more facilitation for cars or vehicles.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, again, a great question. There's a couple of things. Green Star, I suppose, is a number of headings, I suppose, in a very simpler form. A number of headings. Within those headings is targets. Within those targets, there's points. The more points you get, the closer you get to the different levels of accreditation. So for us, the car parking element is more so around the varied types of parking we're looking to provide. Hybrid vehicle parking, designated hybrid vehicle parking, designated EV parking. So that's what we're looking to facilitate in the car park. So we're not building the car park, all 60 odd parks, to achieve Green Star. Just there is elements within the car park that we are attributing to our Green Star score that we're looking to achieve. If we were not to build a car park, we would look to try and fit those EV hybrid parking somewhere else to try and achieve the score, or if we surrendered those points, try and pick up those points elsewhere, which might be, you know, multimodal transport assessment, and to see if we can hit those particular score points. So it's a bit of it is a bit of points makes prizes, and for us, we try and take some of the easier ones, I suppose. So, you know, providing EV parking, providing hybrid parking, and that sort of stuff. They're sort of, you know, low-lying fruit. We can tick that box, and they are sitting in the car park. So if we do not do the car park, we do put the Green Star accreditation at risk. If we can find alternatives to still achieve those points, we would definitely try and do that first.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay. I've got two more to come, but just before I do that, I might add my penny's worth. As we heard at the very beginning, this is very much, for me, do we continue with option one, or do we look to reduce our costs? And if we do want to reduce our costs, what are the costs of removing either Green Star, car parking, or the digital futuristic aspects of it? And I get uncomfortable about all three of those. I support what Tom says, that delaying a car park 2 years doesn't save you 1.5, it just delays you 1.5 today. You don't have to put the money in, but you still got to put it in 2 years from now. And offset against that $60,000 a year is the potential that the car park costs you a bit more when you go to build it. So inflation kicks in. I support what Grant says as well about the community funders. I've had feedback from two large community funders that have funded us already, and one may look to fund us some more, to say that they are quite uncomfortable about what we're dealing with today. That they've been sold a product that is quite futuristic, a product that engages with a new level of children that might want to continue to come back to our new museum. The Green Star is important to some of them, and I think once we start watering it down, we'll unhinge the potential for further funding. So my personal preferences, as Grant has already said, is just to continue with option one. But anyway, two more speakers. Yeah, I've got some hands up. Grant.
Yeah, so just wanted to come back to Poni's point with Eloise. So I think both, you know, capital and an OPEX budget are being applied to the design experience, the experience design for me. So while they're taking into account what the cost of capital of setting it up, equally that'll be playing into, and what Eloise talked to was the operational cost of, if you have this versus that, how's that change that operational cost? So that sort of gives us comfort from a governance level, I suppose, of we're trying to measure those two things and come up with the optimum in terms of getting that experience. In terms of the car parking, again, I've been train spotting, so I've been past Queen's Park on sort of Saturdays and Sundays, most things for the last 6 weeks, and particularly at the weekend, if you went past there wasn't a car park anywhere there. And so we're building a museum that we're probably, you know, during a peak time of Saturday between 11 and 3, I wasn't there for the whole time, so you can rest easy, but and Sunday, you know, that's when your peak time probably will be. And you know, there was no car parks in any of the behind by the bowling alley, right back through and even beyond the cricket entrance into that other area, and all the way around was there, and all the way in front. Don't forget those food trucks are there. And so, you know, my view of it is that we are cutting our nose off despite our face if we don't invest in a car park now. And I just think about the visitor experience, and if you think back to the previous museum, there was a heck of a lot of camper vans that came to the museum and used that as their base to the city, their sort of beachhead of coming there, and that's what we want them to do, isn't it? We want them to come and have a beachhead in the city and then expand and explore our city and our province from there. So, you know, I think we've got to think very carefully about, you know, the decision around the car park would be my comment.
So, having done some train spotting last week in Christchurch, I went and had a look at the new Christchurch Museum, and it is massive, but it doesn't have much car parking. But the offset of that is they have buses that run past just about any facility in Christchurch, somewhere between 8 and 15 minutes apart, and free between 9 and 4 for people my age, and free for children as well. So it's good if you've got the alternative, and most of the buses are e-buses, so that's a great news story, but that comes at a huge cost if you don't have the volume. And I guess, as Grant said, volume that we will get will not just be Southlanders. There will be people that will come in that will see the museum as a place to go and visit while they're in the south. Trish.
Yeah, Grant's covered what I was going to ask.
Okay, thank you. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably need to ask Eloise to come back to the table for this because it's a query about option 4. So option 4 of all these options is the only one where the operational, that is the staff directed delivery, is being questioned. And what we asked in the original brief was that the experience in this new museum had the absolute wow factor. What we have received as the epitome of that wow factor is the 70-30 split that we've got there. I just wanted to quote something from the Youth Council. So our Youth Council, who represent a certain percentage of our young people, noted in their submission that it was the actual heritage of the region which they wanted access to rather than digital content. Seems to me that a lot of the discussion that's happened about the 70-30 has been because people don't understand what that split will be and what it will allow access to. So I suppose why I wanted you to be at the table, Eloise, was just to confirm that the 70-30 split is going to allow access to what people, not only the Youth Council, but a lot of older people refer to as the actual heritage of the region. And by that I think a lot of people are meaning the physical things that currently sit in Tisbury. Can you just assure the public who are listening to us today that this operational split that we've said is going to bring the real wow factor to this museum is going to mean the actual heritage of the region is going to be very much on display?
Thank you for the question, and yes, I would assure you that the physical artefacts would be part of a display, and I say that because the unique selling point of any museum is that we utilise the original, the artefacts from our history, our connection with the past, and we interpret them and we use them to tell stories. And as curators, as experienced designers, we think about how we're going to tell those stories, and we use all of the means available to us to tell the story. So in the past you might have a more static experience because that's, and you might have a written label about it, but now we have all of these different methods and opportunities, from tactile displays to digital immersive opportunities, to provide an enriched and layered, storytelling opportunity that might be suitable for young people or older people or families. So what we put in the pot are all of those things, and we come up with this balance, so that the budget piece around there is making sure we've got the maximum opportunity to do some of the more innovative things. And it's all kind of building and layering on this foundation that we have, which are these very precious items that we hold that speak to our heritage. And it's so interwoven as well, because if you think of historic photographs and film, look, I'm not putting the original negatives on display, but we're digitising those and we're turning them into something else that tells a story about the history of Invercargill. So that is very much in my mind when I'm thinking about the split, how we tell the stories, how we utilise everything that's at our disposal, so that everyone, you get the opportunity to maybe not touch, see, look and see the real thing, and then you've got these different mechanisms to help tell the story.
And this is very much refreshable so that you can update the displays, that all the physical objects are used. No one's favourite physical object is going to sit forever in Tisbury without the possibility of it being part of an exciting wow factor display.
Well, what we are doing, and what museums generally do, is we have longer term experiences, and that's where we have things that are up for a longer period of time, and then we've got those spaces we've talked about where we would have changing exhibitions, changing experiences, and that's the opportunity. It might sometimes be an external touring exhibition, it might sometimes be something that our local historians and curators have, weaving a new narrative with objects from Tisbury to tell a different story. So with digital experiences as well, a lot of the cost comes from the content development and not the hardware. So it's all about actually what you invest in operationally into your curators and all of those sorts of people to enable that level of refresh to happen. But we're creating a facility with that aim in mind, because that's what the message I've heard is that people want to see changing things, they want, and they want to see, we want to be able to share a big collection over time.
Thank you very much. That's a really good summary. Thank you.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Grant's right. For 6 months of the year, the Invercargill Old Boys Cricket Club, you can't get a park there in summer months. The same with North End Bowling Club and the Invercargill Croquet Club. You can't rely on those parks at all. Look, we shouldn't reduce any car parks. I feel that the 75 is not enough, but it's very important we should have the car parks. We shouldn't delay anything at all. If you go back to the late 1990s, when this council, I wasn't here then, that they tried to save a few tens of thousands of dollars at Splash Palace. Yes, they did, but then all of a sudden, after the thing was built, they couldn't have any national swimming events because there was no place for the spectators. They had to put a clip on the south side, and that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I tell you now, we get one chance of doing this, and we must do it right. We must go the full hog. Get it out of the way.
Thank you. Tom.
Chair, I wonder if you'd be ready to take a motion at this stage?
Yes.
Because I would like to move that we support option 1.
Yep.
And if I might just speak to that and give you the reasons for saying so, and there are really 3. The first thing is that I actually came to this meeting very much with the intention of finding a cost-saving opportunity. But, having listened to the discussion, what I realise is that there were very good reasons actually for including those things in the first place, and we spent a long time talking about Green Star, and we spent time talking about the car park, and we talked at length about the experience, and we probably landed in the right place when we talked about it back then. So the second thing I would say is that while I read every submission, as everybody here did, of course, but I was probably most influenced by the verbal submissions I got in IC when we did the stand-up there. And I spoke to about 40 people, and the overwhelming mood was just get on and do it. They were probably more annoyed about being asked, actually, right? Just get on and do it. And when you pushed them a little bit, because you wanted me to put balls in the right places, when you pushed them a little bit, they said, okay, maybe the car park's not that important, and maybe the green. But the overwhelming mood was just get on and do it, right? The third thing I would say is that the difference between option 1 and option 4, with option 4 being the one where everything is out, is about 0.5% on off rates, which is about $15 a year for, the average person.
Yeah.
I know that's important to some people, many people maybe, but look, when I take it overall, I think that we spent a long time arriving at what we thought was the optimum design for the museum over the past year, really. And therefore, I support carrying on doing what we are doing. So I would move option 1.
Okay.
Second.
No, before I get to a second, I just want to add something to that. I think one of the things about the papers we get from staff, they are required to give us a rateable increase so that we know how much this is going to impact. But you don't have to assume that by going to one option ahead of the other that it's going to bump rates up or necessarily bump borrowing up, because we have other sources of revenue available to us. As we get further down this track, we need to think about how we raise funds. Now, one of the obvious ways is to get more money out of some people that might fund us. Another way is to sell a property that we might own, that it gives us a better return to take that money and invest it in the museum as opposed to leaving it where it currently is. So we have a range of options available to us. To me, the money's not the issue. Nobody likes to spend extra money, but it doesn't have to automatically have a starting point that rates are going to go up. So I just thought I'd mention that. A seconder for that motion. Yeah, Trish, thank you. Anybody like to speak towards it before I put the motion? Darren, yes?
Thank you. I'm in a similar position to Tom, and my history with this goes back probably over 15 years, when version 1, and this is 3, was at 24.6 million. Version 2 was at over 40 million, and you can see what happens as time progresses. I thought through the process of consultation and hearing of submissions that, you know, maybe we want to try and make some cost savings. But the savings are actually minimal, or in some cases, as Tom pointed out, just postponing. And in that case, all we're doing is tinkering. And then what started to weigh on me, apart from the influence of Grant's oratory earlier, was the fact that we will actually have a generation of kids who've grown up in Invercargill without a museum. And we owe it to them, their kids, and their parents to make sure that we're giving them something that is worth the wait, that the community expects. And as been mentioned, people are really kind of over the consultation around the museum. They want it there now. Please don't ask me another question until it's built. Well, there will be more questions because we'll probably have to ask them about the experience as we get to that stage. Yeah. But by then they'll see a construct going up. At the moment they can see the space where the museums were previously. And so I think going back to option 1 just makes good sense. Yes, it costs a little more in dollar cents, but I'm trying to measure that off against what people are going to get for it. And actually also those partnership values, because if we're going to go out and ask for more from people or try and entice other funding agencies and sponsors in, it's about what's the value proposition that we're offering. I wasn't overly convinced that getting the accreditation for Green Star was hugely necessary. Having the principles of that type of construct I see as being exceptionally valuable. But if as a point of difference, a saleable point of difference, I think it can really make a difference. Apart from the pride aspect of it, which we heard during submissions in here just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm supporting option 1 as well.
Yeah, thank you. Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, we've been, I think, a responsible council. We looked very hard at the possibility of some cost savings. We went out to consultation with a preferred option that actually said remove Green Star and delay the car park. That was council's preferred option at the time because it was a cost saving. What we've got back from the public and what I'm absolutely convinced by is the do it once and do it right. I think the overwhelming message we got back from the majority of people, not everybody, we all know that there were some who wanted us to pause the whole project and go back to the very beginning, but the overwhelming message that I got, and I believe other councillors got, was go ahead with what's a great project. We want a new museum. We want it to be a New Zealand leading museum. We want it to have the bells and whistles and the wow factor that you talked about right at the start. We don't want corners cut. The more I think about the options of removing Green Star and delaying the car park, the more I'm thinking we'd be cutting small corners that in the bigger picture of things don't end up with the wow factor delivery that we always said we wanted. Where we started a project to replace an old, tired building that had to go, but that people loved because it was a pyramid shape, even if it was always meant to be a temporary feature, and that we always needed to say we can produce something better. To me, option one is definitely the something better, and I've been even more convinced of that as we've gone through this exercise, that there's no cutting of small corners here that we could do as a responsible council that would pay off in the long term. What we have as a long-term project, we want it to be the best it possibly can be, and option one is it. So I'm very much in support of us going for option one.
Thank you. Ria?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I understand and respect that this is a major capital project for this council to take on board. I would be somewhat of a hypocrite, and as I don't like being that, I have to say that on principle, I'll be voting against that option, not for the reason that we don't need the museum, not for the reason that we've heard submitters, but as actually comes prior to that, it's the reason for July being notified that we wouldn't meet the budgeted outcome at that time. So that, for me, on principle, I won't be supporting that option.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment? No? I'll put the motion in. It's in front of you. It's option one. Proceed with the final design based on the brief. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Yeah, and you want it recorded?
Yes, please.
Yep, thank you. Well done, team. Next meeting, 3 o'clock. You can go back to bed now, Lee, or back to a beer, or whatever you're doing.
Thank you.